Okay, it's Wednesday, April 17th, 2024. I'm with John Jakovich, World War II vet, and we're talking and reading his book, Their Mother's Son, from 2003 when it was written. We're on page 128. We're picking up there. Then they walked up the street in the direction of the church. As I walked in the opposite direction, neither my mother nor Sally turned around and looked back the entire block. They were in each other's view. I turned and looked back several times before they were around the corner.
I remember that. I remember that right there.
You don't remember that?
Yeah, they're going to the movies, yeah.
Yeah.
What movies did they go see?
I don't know.
I would not see my mother and sister again for several years, nor would either write to me that often during that time. I waited several hours for the train to depart. As I sat there, I was greeted with the same familiar sights. People were saying goodbye to their loved ones, their husbands, and their sweethearts. I once again had no one to say goodbye to. I felt lonely, but worse yet, I was feeling I had felt too often in my young life was I could not be snuffed out with no other feeling felt but that of loneliness. What was it all about that made me lonely? Despondent figure, nor not loved by anyone, least of all by my own flesh and blood. Lord knows I did not blame my parents. They had many problems with their very little room for anything else or anyone. To my mother, it was a daily struggle for survival and permanence, with no one to share her fears and doubts. My sister must have given her some of her small measure of support and comfort, as they seemed fairly close during the time I was home. My mother was probably apprehensive about that relationship also, since I had her under different circumstances. What would be my sister's outlook several years from now? Naturally, she would want to lead her own life, thereby having my mother alone once again. This was a force driving my mother, the fear of loneliness. She was too proud to admit it even to herself, to anyone else. The train finally departed. I felt... What's going on, Jen?
Oh, he's fine.
I felt the same fear but neither one of us could transfer the rationality to one another or seek consolation from one another. The train finally departed the station as before, and there were more servicemen than civilians on board. Fortunately, I was lucky to get a quiet compartment with no gambling and parties on it. The train compartment was mostly made up of soldiers on their way to bases and camps in Texas and Florida. As they seemed acquainted with one another, I did not join into the conversation, but looked out the window at scenery going by. I soon fell asleep and slept soundly for several hours until we reached Cleveland. The journey back to Owensboro would be the opposite of the trip up. It would be Buffalo, Erie, Cleveland, and Columbus. A short layover in Cincinnati, on to Louisville, Evansville, and finally the bus trip to Owensboro. Returning from the snack bar, I once again settled down into my seat and prepared for the long night ahead. It would be dark shortly, as was not be the distraction of the scenery going by. The time would drag. The only alternatives were to read, join in the conversation with someone, or just other alternatives sleep. And I began to read a paperback I had bought at Mario's. That Mario's newsstand is still there. The Mario's newsstand is still there.
The what's there?
The Mario's newsstand on Pine Avenue.
Oh, yeah.
Still there. On the way back from the cleaners the last time I was on Pine Avenue. Although the book would be interesting under different circumstances, I soon lost my sense of concentration and put it back in my overnight bag. The motion of the train made me sleepy, and the overhead lights were off, which made it conducive to sleep. I awoke briefly several times during the night, but each time managed to fall asleep again. A little after daylight, I woke again and looked out the window at the sunrise. We would be shortly coming into Cleveland for a brief stop, and then on to Louisville and Owensboro. The stop at Cincinnati was short than the stop we had counted on a previous trip.
There she comes.
All right. Read, I'll get her over.
You gotta help her over here,
I
Jen.
will.
Call her over, Jen.
I did. Come on through. Come on. Watch out for that. I'm coming.
Hello. Hello.
Oh,
Hi, Claire. Hi, Claire.
Earlier and nobody was here.
Yeah, come on over. Sit down over here.
Yeah.
No, that's fine, I can give it, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, Claire.
Hi.
hello, grab a chair.
They like to stick in the carpet.
We're just reading the book, and my father's taking a train ride from his furlough back to his base. And that's where we're at right now. We're just going through Cincinnati.
Oh, how exciting.
Okay. Okay. We'll be coming shortly into Cincinnati for a brief stop, and there on to Louisville and Owensboro. The stop at Cincinnati was much shorter than the stop we encountered on a previous trip. I had not sooner gotten off the train to stretch my legs, but the conductor was shouting everyone back on board. We passed Louisville a little after 1200 hours. As we got closer to Evansville, I began to think about how Ann would look and react to me. I knew her greeting would be warm, but usually we would see each other's true feelings. The train pulled into Evansville station, and I immediately began to look for a local bus to Owensboro. I decided to take a cab to Weatherby's Bed and Breakfast, get there and check in and shower and shave, and get back to the station to wait for Ann's arrival. The bus trip from Evansville to Owensboro was familiar and heartwarming. I felt in a way that I was going home. As the bus drove into the station, I stopped. I felt good for being here, as if I belonged. I got off the bus and headed for the cab stand. I had taken a few steps when someone called my name. It was Ann. I turned out with outstretched arms. I ran over to her and threw my arms around her. I felt great seeing and holding her once again. I asked her what she was doing here so early. I came early because I wanted to see you as soon as possible, she said, and besides I wanted you to get settled in. All the while she was smiling her usual sweet, loving smile, and I was glad she was here. I did not feel lonely anymore. I told her I was delighted that she has been here and I missed her greatly. She looked inviting, and I noticed that she had done her hair differently, which beautiful, and she smiled and took my hand as we walked to her car. Ann objected when I informed her of my plans to stay at Weatherby's. She insisted I stay at that house, starting that they had plenty of room. I did not want to impose on her mother's hospitality just now. Perhaps later in the week we could discuss it once again. We would have to see how things went and take it from there. As we drove down US 90 towards Weatherby's, I again mentioned to Ann how much I missed her. It was good to be by her side, talking and laughing with her. I did not realize how much I really missed her. She attentively watched as we spoke and moved while she maneuvered the car through the streets. I acquired the same room that I had on the 2 previous occasions. Anne made herself right at home as she sank into the familiar large rocker and crossed a footstand. I reached down and kissed her, saying I had missed her very much and I loved her. After a few moments, I whispered into her ear that I could have to shower and I'll be change my uniform from a long train ride. She waited, but as she only sat there and rocked back and forth, her trim ankle dangling hair across her knee. The hot shower felt good, as I was always taking cold showers at my mother's house, as I stood under its refreshing spray. After shaving, I put on a clean uniform and left off a clean shirt and trousers. "What made you come back early?" she quietly asked softly, continued running her fingers through her hair. I replied that she knew that I came back early, as it was a question to ask. She jerked a fistful of my hair and repeatedly the same question. It became serious and stated that I should have never left. I felt terrible when I did just that. I knew I should spend some time at home, but I was frustrated at the last minute and did not want to leave. Rather than make a positive move, I bundled it, trying to appease both sides of my ambiguous nature. I was also told Anne that I carried way too much excess baggage and emotional arena from my past life, and I was afraid it would interfere with our relationship, which I cherished very much. I stated that I was unsure it was really good for her, and I did not want to cause her undue pain and suffering. I said, my voice began to tremble and awaken some as I considered stating once again how we had first met, and the insight was instantly gained in our first encounter. Yet we were still unsure of our true predisposition towards one another until our second meeting. She interrupted by placing her fingers and got off the rocker. Let's see. And I was also thinking, she quietly added, if you weren't good for me, I would have realized it a long time ago. She quickly got up and walked to the window and looked at me, and I thoughtfully peered upon the ceiling. She asked if I was hungry, and I said she had questioned me before and wondered if I recalled what I said. She smiled coyly, walked towards me, stood over me. She was beautiful from that angle, and I told her so. We decided to dine at Shirley's Townhouse Restaurant on 3rd Street, a short distance from where we are now. Annie went to the bathroom to freshen up, and I put on another clean shirt and tie. We've been at Shirley's before and enjoyed it very much. It would be nice to return there again. As we drove there, I sat close to Anne, and I questioned her about the gifts that I've given her a while, and replied that she was wearing a pair now. I remarked rather that I know I would not feel bad about wearing them out. We enjoyed our meal at Shirley's and limited our conversation to my experiences while on furlough. While I kept the discussion to a minimum, I quickly changed the subject of what I expect when I return to camp. I then mentioned I always felt dispirited when I returned to camp after being with her. She agreed, and she said that she felt the same way that I felt about going back to camp. After leaving the restaurant, Anne suggested a movie and said that she would pay. I objected, but she insisted. I was rather thankful as I was running low on cash. So all your money, okay.
You
So,
were running low on gas?
cash.
Cash.
He's just almost at
Hey,
the
John,
end
you were running low on
He's almost
gas?
at the end of his furlough, so all the money was already.
Oh, wow,
I think
John.
they gave him like $25 for the whole month.
Oh, my gosh. John, how much money did they give you every night or every month? John? No, cut it short.
I don't know, I guess I'll just read. After leaving, I made the suggestion that we drive out to the bluff of the river and watch the lights in Evansville below. As usual, it was crowded with onlookers, and Ann finally found a spot and parked the car. She put her head back, and I reached over and kissed her. I wished her that I would miss her all this very much. She agreed, saying that she would have a difficult time adjusting after I left, and I thought something that I was going to ask her earlier. Why aren't you in school tonight? I blurted out. And why were you so early this afternoon? I acted like one of my sergeants back to camp, I thought, but the questions just came popping up, and I waited in anticipation for her answers.
Maybe I'll go get some water. Hey,
Okay,
John,
we'll
you want some
take a
water?
break a minute then. You want some water?